when you read David's profile, you'll see, he teaches criminal law at Stanford, and he's a partner at Fortress, and he's obviously been very involved writing the Prop 36 language and being the funder and the leader for making all that change happen. But what you don't know, looking at this, white Jewish professor from New Jersey, you're Jewish, is that he is the chairman of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He's been doing work in social justice and criminal justice for way longer than I've known him. And I'm proud he's my husband, and I'm really proud of the changes that he's made on behalf of some of the people that you saw in the film, who after spending 15, 20 years in jail are able to use some of those community programs that Matt alluded to and some of the things that Jennifer is going to talk about to get their lives back again. So David.
I know you're really here to see a Hangover movie. I've never seen one, so just to So I'm giving a lot of credit way beyond that credit I should get. So before I start talking a little about what happened and what we were able to accomplish, I want to acknowledge a couple of people. Mike, where are you? Romano.
Back left, baby.
Right there. So Mike Romano is really, I criticize, I ridicule, he kind of works for me. He is really one of the most remarkable public servants I have ever met. He's a person who's dedicated his life to this change, and Mike is about the most responsible person I can imagine who really has changed the lives of thousands of people through his work. So, thank you. That's okay, you can stop clapping. And without Ann, none of this would have happened. I was completely made insane, as I'll try and describe a little of that during the process, but she not only kept me sane, she was one of the major driving intellectual forces behind what became Prop 36. So, a little bit of background. The theme here, for me, is a theme of change. That change is really possible as long as you decide to try and focus on a narrow enough area so that the change can be made and you can see and let it build upon itself. We have been spoiled in this country by the remarkable change brought about by the Civil Rights Movement. And revolutionary change such as that happens once every 100 years. It's not going to happen again. And the way change now needs to be accomplished is through bite-sized pieces that build upon the possibility of huge change. But it happens one step at a time. So, what was 3 strikes? Many of you, or probably all of you, know the notion, commit 3 crimes and you're out. How did it happen, and why did it happen? This country, starting in the 70s and then with Matt Gaetz, governor, Reagan, that, I didn't know that, I would have said something. That this started because the country was in a fearful period. Fear of crime, fear of violence, fear of the streets. People felt, particularly in the cities, they couldn't walk, they couldn't live. They just felt under assault. And out of that began a view that we had career criminals who were taking over the country. And at the same time, we started closing our community-based mental health services, particularly here in California and across the country, for some legitimate and some not so legitimate reasons. And those combined factors led to an increasing crime rate. And folks tried to figure out, what are we going to do about it? And so somebody came up with this brilliant idea of, let's adopt a baseball metaphor. And I'm serious, that's how it started. And in fact, for a while, I tried to figure out how much money I could raise to persuade baseball to make it 4 strikes. But the metaphor was, if you commit 3 crimes, 3 serious crimes was the basic notion, you go to prison for the rest of your life. Think about it. Prison for the rest of your life for a 3rd offense for people who commit multiple offenses. when they're young. You commit these offenses between the ages of 20 and 30, you get out of prison when you're 60 or 70. And that's began one of the core reasons for so many of the prisoners in our country's system being subject to life in prison. Because this three strikes notion took off. It began in Washington, where they adopted a three strikes, where you have 3 serious offenses. And then it moved to California, the state of Washington. It moved to California at a time when we were facing increasing fear and a law and order attitude. Anybody who was soft on crime was going to be tarred and was going to lose their election. So you had that atmosphere going on, fear, more fear. And then Reynolds' daughter was assaulted and killed. Mike Reynolds, terrible situation. His daughter's purse was snatched, as I remember. And during that altercation, she was killed. And the fellow who did it was a multiple offender. And at his sentencing, Mike Reynolds' daughter's killer got 9 years in prison. And Reynolds said, I am going to be still paying for my daughter's funeral when that guy gets out of prison. Powerful, powerful argument. And he said, I'm going to devote my life, just tell me when to stop. I'm going to devote my life, otherwise I'll just talk to, I'm going to devote my life to the notion of putting career criminals behind bars for the rest of their lives. Don't care about the cost, don't care about the effect. It got some legs, and the legislature considered it. Pete Wilson was kind of half in, half out, and all of a sudden, another event occurred. Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas from Petaluma was kidnapped. A huge search for her. Ultimately, she's found dead. Winona Ryder, the actress, I think that was her name, did a film about this, and the Polly Klaas case became the core for the three strikes law in California. Reynolds' three strikes law, which was different than the one the legislature was going to pass. Reynolds' three strikes law, which was passed by ballot initiative, and that's critical, which was passed by ballot initiative, resulted in not just serious violent crimes being the subject of your three strikes, but any serious offense, even, for example, not residential robbery without a weapon, et cetera, et cetera. Worse, in California we have this weird thing called wobblers. Wobblers are misdemeanors which can be charged as felonies, especially if they're a third strike, up to the prosecutor. Any crime, trivial or otherwise, which could be a felony, was going to be a third strike. Any crime, no matter how trivial, was going to be a third strike if the prosecutor so charged it. So what does that mean? What could be charged as a felony? Well, any shoplifting. Steal a pair of gloves from Walmart, or wherever it was they stole from. Steal a piece of pizza. Take something when you're walking by and you see a bottle of milk on a kitchen table and you reach in and take it, that was a third strike. What else could be a third strike? Cheating on a motor vehicle exam. Good thing I hadn't committed 2 other strikes. Remarkable series of offenses could result in 3 strikes and result in life in prison. So we had these 2 deaths. We had poor Polly and Reynolds' daughter, tragic beyond belief. And then we had 3 strikes. And the proposition that resulted in the enactment of 3 strikes resulted in the harshest version of 3 strikes in the United States. Of the 34 states that have 3 strikes, California was the only one that had the third strike being such a limited or minimal offense. As a result, we had 9,000 folks, approximately, in prison for 3 strikes. 3,500 to 4,000 of them were in prison for a trivial third offense. That was the reality. One more piece of reality. Prop 66, which was a proposition that kind of was like Prop 36, was put on the ballot to try and at least change the harshest elements of California's three strikes. This was 6 years ago. And Prop 66 looked like it was passing. And then all of a sudden, at the very last minute, Henry Nicholas, who is a telecom billionaire from Southern California whose sister was killed by her boyfriend, decided he was opposed to this. And he got Pete Wilson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jerry Brown to go out and say, we cannot allow this to pass. And then they Willie Hortoned it. They put pictures of this very gruesome looking felon on television who was African American and who looked really mean. And it failed, even though it looked like it was passing up until the last minute. So Prop 66 lost. And I moved to California prior to this and was kind of interested in criminal justice areas, and I've been asked to talk a little about why I decided to do this. And, you know, I'm a child of the 60s. I know I look like a child of the 50s, but I was actually a child of the 60s. And as a child of the 60s, I really did believe, and really do believe, that change is possible, and that we have a responsibility to leave the world a better place than we found it. Well, I found the world okay when I came here, and it got a lot worse. So making it a little bit better wasn't that hard. But really decided that this was something that was of keen interest to me. We needed to get rid of three strikes. We needed to go back to a period in which rehabilitation was the principle under which we're operating, and not simply retribution and incarceration, separation, taking people off the streets. Because one of the things we found, by the way, was that three strikes wasn't really reducing crime. The facts didn't support it. So the first notion we had was, let's repeal three strikes. Big idea. You know, we can make big change. And so we looked at that, and Ann and I were thinking about it, and we polled it. And what do we find? Three strikes is a brand that ain't going away. So what could we do? So we thought about, maybe we should try and do Prop 66 again, but this time a little more targeted, a little better, a little smarter. And I won't go through the story of Prop 36.
Because you've got 2 minutes.
Okay. I won't go through the
I get to do that.
I won't go through the story of Prop 36 and how we have managed to build this extraordinary coalition from the right and the left, law enforcement and defenders. I won't go through all that. It's a fascinating story, I think. But the bottom line was, if I could tell it, you really would love it. So if you want me to, you know, just the story of Prop 36 was a story in which folks were able to come together to try and make this small change. Now, why do we want to make this small change? It's not perfect. Why do we want to make this small change? Well, because we believe that through this small change, politicians would then begin to get the gumption to change the law, to change more of the criminal justice system that was failing. What we found when we finally got Prop 36 passed by 70% of the vote, which was completely unexpected, when we finally got Prop 36 passed, we found that 55% of three strikers, who, particularly the three strikers who were subject to Prop 36, were African American. Prison population is 28%, 55% are black in this particular population. Furthermore, we found, to my real surprise, was a staggering number were mentally ill, mentally challenged. But we've managed, today, or right around today, we're announcing our 2,000th prisoners release, which is incredible. And more importantly, our recidivism rate is about 1%. Wow. 1%. That's not due to the work we're doing necessarily, or we'd like to believe that we had some help there. What it's due to is the fact that a lot of these guys are old. But more significantly, old people don't commit nearly as many crimes as young people. I don't know why that is. But what's really important was that we managed to start, with Scott's help, really, to start taking these people from the prison and working with them, providing them with support, trying to get mental health help for them. We'll talk about that more later. But basically, we've managed to do this through this coalition, but it's really a notion that's born out of a deep, abiding belief, and I want to make one other point, a deep, abiding belief that the citizens of this state and the politicians of this state are good people. They're not evil, they're not bad. They're frightened, but they're none of those things. When I polled the Three Strikes, and I asked the question, do you think it would be a good idea to release people under 3 strikes because it's costing us too much money? We got nowhere. When I polled, do you think it's wrong, we should save money by releasing these folks who have committed trivial offenses? I got nowhere. When I asked the question, do you think we should release these people because it's not fair, it's wrong, got an overwhelming support. So it's not the cynical population that's our problem. It's our own cynicism about the population that's the problem. It's the citizens, the cynicism of the elected officials are the problem. The population is not cynical. We couldn't raise money for 3 strikes, except from a few folks, and we put in most of the money, and Soros helped significantly. But it was the result of this great belief that small change can build to huge change. And it's possible, but we have to do it one step at a time. Whatever step we pick, let it be a step that is accomplishable, that's doable, that we can see, that people will see and develop the power of the people and the power of the citizens and the power of each of us to develop a change that will result in meaningful change in the criminal justice system, which has become such an extraordinary disaster. Sorry I spoke so long.